Now, one of your posts on LinkedIn from 4 months ago, you've penned down your professional journey in a very simple manner. That's 26 plus years described in about 800 to 1,000 words. We'd like you to elaborate a little more on that front, especially the highlights. The first day of work on 4th of October 1995.
Wow, you just made me a bit nostalgic there. 4th of October 1995. I said 1st of October because that's when I left home. Okay. Because I was supposed to join on the 4th of October in Chennai, and I am from a small town in the southern part of Tamil Nadu, which is slightly north of Kanyakumari, which means I'm from the deep south, as they say.
Okay.
So first job, so I left a few days ahead, took a bus, went to Chennai, stayed with my cousin because I didn't know anything in Chennai. I was a small town boy. Right. Big city was something just vast, unending, big spaces, and I was just not ready for that.
True.
So that's how the first day started. My cousin's daughter, my niece, actually took me to the bus stand, showed me which bus I should take, how I should get down. It was as simple as that. It's not that I did not know how to take a bus. It was just that the right bus to take and the right time to reach the office. And that's how it started. And on day one, my manager welcomed me in, and he gave me an assignment, which was to go to a client place. And I was really not ready for that. But then there was a senior who came with me, who made me very comfortable, took me with him as an apprentice, and showed me what needs to be done.
Right.
So that is how my first day went, and I will never forget the customer. I will never forget my manager and the senior who took me. These were the key personalities of my day one.
Absolutely. So when you went, to the new city, was it intimidating as well for you? The new city and the big hype.
It was. Language was not a problem, but the way things were done in those days, it was no internet, no mobile phones. It's a landline phone. A lot were different, right? You can easily get lost. There were no maps, right? There were no Google Maps, so
absolutely,
it was all from the word of the mouth. So you want to go to some place, you have to ask which bus goes there, or which or you have to take an auto, and sometimes you may not be able to afford an auto because this is your first job, right?
Absolutely.
So all those minor things which today are laughable matters.
True.
Were challenges those days. Yeah.
Yes, true. And so from then on, how was the journey like?
It has been an amazing, fantastic journey since that day, and I stayed with that first company just for about a year. As I said, it was field support, and field support not only within the city. I had to travel all over Tamil Nadu, and all over South India as well. So it was a great experience as a young professional to travel, look at places. I visited Mumbai, I visited Cochin, I visited Pondicherry, I visited some places in Andhra Pradesh. So as a young professional just out of college, it was nice to travel. But eventually, the travel also wears you down. True. And also it was I spent a couple of years in the electronics industry before I switched to IT. So when so the first year it was the technology that I worked on was load cells, which was the electronics electronic weighing machines that actually weigh a product and pour it into a container. So for example, if it is fertilizer and the fertilizer bag has to be 50 kgs, then the system will weigh exactly 50 kg and pour it into the bag. The bags will be coming in the conveyor belt, and this will weigh and pour. So it's a very, very fast environment where it will weigh and pour, and during that there should not be any mistakes that can happen. So it was a very challenging but interesting area to work. Go to the industry, set up the system, troubleshoot the system, maintain the system. So it was a good learning experience at that time. Then a couple of years later, IT was the great bandwagon, and I got many advisors in my life who said I should switch to IT. Right. And so one day I took one of them very seriously. Again, a person I will never forget in my life. He sat me down, looked me into my eyes, and said, "What are you doing in the electronics industry? It has no future." Well, in hindsight, things changed, but that time, it was a bleak. It looked pretty bleak,
Right.
and so I said, "Okay, this is the time." So I walked out of that job. Came home, and my parents gave me an earful saying that you can't hold a job. What nonsense is this?
Right.
This is highlights, right? We're talking about highlights, and highlights includes this as well. But
True.
but I made a deal with my dad at that time. I said I'm moving into IT, and it has a bright future. I can go to the United States. And when I said I can go to the United States, my dad caught that, and he said, "Promise me that I'm going to the United States. I'll give you the money for your IT course." I
Okay.
said, "Okay." So that's the deal we made. And he gave me the money, and he said, "This is the last bit of money I'm going to give you for your education.
Right.
Don't come back to me for anything with related to your education." I said, "Okay, thanks, Dad." So I went back to Chennai, and I I started a networking course. So those days,
True.
there were multiple areas you can go into. I could have gone into a Java programmer
Right.
course, or I could have done an Oracle DBA course. Those days, mainframes were also in the forefront, so I could have taken a mainframe course as well. But I liked the networking area, so I got into networking, and I got CNE certified. Those days were the novel netware days, so I became a certified novel engineer, and so that was another highlight. And as soon as I got certified, within a month I got my first IT job. So I joined my first IT job on the 1st of July 1997, and
Oh,
this was
okay.
with a company called Nexus Computers.
Right.
And it was great. It was great. I learned a lot, and eventually I moved to a company called Microland, which is one of the major IT service providers still in India.
True.
And then, lo and behold, 2 years later, I got my US offer. I attended a walk-in interview. I got selected. My H1B was done, and this was with a company called Hexaware. Hexaware is now a big company, but those days it was quite small.
True.
And and so Hexaware sent me to the US. So I went to the US as a network and systems engineer. Started my first project was in New York City, big
Wow.
city again, huge city I should say.
Absolutely.
And then what a little bit of a stint at Washington DC, and then I moved to the Bay Area
Right.
in the early 2000s. And this was February 2000 when I moved to the Bay Area.
Right.
And one day I was working for a client called Mercury Interactive. The company doesn't exist anymore. HP bought them eventually, but
Okay.
those days there was this company called Mercury Interactive, and I was a systems engineer there. And one day my manager calls me in, and he says, "We are doing a firewall upgrade project, and we are looking for somebody to lead this project." I said, "Great. Who's that going to be?" And he looks me into my eye and he says, "That's you." And I said, "Are you kidding me?" He said, "No, I'm not kidding you." And I said, "I don't know anything about firewalls." He
Right.
said, "Okay, I don't know anything about firewalls either. Let's both sit together and learn this together." So that's how it started. I wrote a story about this on LinkedIn a couple of years ago, and
Right.
that's how it really started. It was like a Hollywood movie, seriously. We both left the office, walked out into the California sun, and we went to a park next door. We sat down on the bench in the park, just like how the movies are, and he started talking to me about what a firewall is, and I just listened. I knew what a firewall is in principle, but
The
the details.
implementation is a different ballgame altogether. I mean, at least back
Absolutely.
then, yeah. True.
Absolutely. And that project was a fantastic project because again I traveled the entire United States to wherever that company had their office.
Right.
So yeah, nothing like visiting the United States, various cities like Chicago, Boston, Dallas, Washington D.C. again, New York, of course, on official travel. So
True.
you don't have to pay a penny for it. Right? So it was a
Absolutely.
great experience, and in that the whole experience I learned how to really master a firewall rule base, how to set up a VPN, what is encryption, what encryption standards we should use. It was all self study, but then as they say, self study is the best way of studying, right? So I
Absolutely.
really enjoyed studying that. So came out of that as a firewall expert, and the next stint was at Visa,
Right.
and I was still an Hexaware employee when I joined Visa. but a year later, Visa absorbed me as their employee. So in 2002, I became a Visa employee. And Visa, interestingly, again, you asked about highlights. So I'll give you an interesting highlight. The project that I worked at Visa is still very much into use, and still very much we all use on a day-to-day basis. So when you shop online, and when you're paying with, let's say you're paying with your Visa or your MasterCard credit card, any credit card for that matter, and the final page, the OTP page on which you enter your OTP, so that was my project. That was my project at Visa.
Yeah, it's very much alive till date. True.
Absolutely. So you know how euphoric it is. So when I every time I put the OTP, and I know exactly where these servers used to be. I know exactly how the transactions flow through. I know exactly what is, sometimes it takes a couple of seconds to come back, right? And then I know exactly where it could have been stuck, right? So that's running in my mind. So that was a great experience with Visa. And in 2008, Visa wanted to send a small team to India to set up an office in India. And so I was part of that team. So that's when I returned to India in 2008 after 9 years in the United States.
Was it easy coming back to India? I mean, were you okay or were you hesitant? What was it?
See, yes and no, I should say. Yes, because from a career perspective, it was a great move. I really, because of my US experience and for working for a giant like Visa, I was able to get my next few jobs, and to where I am today. The career progression, the graph was phenomenal. Thanks be to God, and and all the good people I worked with, mentors, managers. It was great. So for a career growth here in India at that time, it was tremendous. But yeah, when you talk about infrastructure, when you talk about the roads, and when you talk about the rest of the how things are between the United States and India, yeah, it was a bit difficult. But then you can never have the best of two worlds, right?
True.
Yeah, so you have to make a compromise somewhere or a sacrifice somewhere, and that's my wife was, and my wife and I were willing to do that. And my wife always wanted to come back to India because she missed home as well. So
I think her manifestation worked as well.
Absolutely. So without your spouse's support, many things can't happen. So let's be clear about that.
True. I totally agree with that. Yes.
So then 2 years later, Goldman offered me a VP position in their technology division. So I joined Goldman Sachs here in Bangalore. 6 years later, one day I was just scrolling through LinkedIn, and I saw a position being advertised for Chief Information Security Officer at Societe Generale, a French company, a French bank which has been around for a very long time.
Absolutely.
And I just applied on LinkedIn. I thought, okay, you apply on LinkedIn, let's see what happens.
Okay.
Interestingly, 2 days later, I got a call. I was so surprised. You apply through LinkedIn and you get a call. I said, this job is for me. I for some reason that time believed that this job is definitely for me.
True.
And exactly that's what happened. A couple of weeks later, I got the offer after a slew of interviews, several rounds of interviews, and I joined them as a Chief Information Security Officer for the business in India. This was when May 2016. So yeah, so it's been almost 6 years now. I've held the position of a CISO or equivalent.
So that's when you came into the cybersecurity field, per se.
Yeah, so on and off. So I started with firewalls. I did, so even at Visa, it was, we have done everything from server hardening to penetration testing. I've been part of that. I've been part of the DR, disaster recovery strategy. So I've done all that. And also in Goldman Sachs. I got into a little bit of application security, again, a little bit of disaster recovery. So I have been doing information security related work all through my career, or since that day when my manager offered me that firewall project, right? So it has been so on and off. I've been doing all that. So that's when I applied for the CISO position, I was confident that I can get through the interview and also do a good job as well. So it was good. And later BNP Paribas called me through a manpower consultant, and they offered me the position of the country manager for information security and BCP, and so it was an upgrade at the time. And nearly 3 years with BNP Paribas is when the Alshaya group called, and that was a global. So I'm currently a global in a global leadership position. So from a local business CISO to a country level CISO to a global level CISO, that's how the career has progressed. And yeah, I'm just all I can say is it's been a dream, and I just don't want this dream to end. That's it.
Well, we don't as well. That's really an awesome journey, Patrick, that you've had.